How did the idea for the butterfly garden first come about?
Um, in about, I guess, 2015, Jeff had originally gone to the university about it because he had been concerned for, I'd say, a couple of years of the dwindling butterfly population. It's most obvious with the monarch because they've counted the monarch, and they estimate that 40 million of them have disappeared in the last 10 years. And so he was aware of all that, of course. And then the one of the federal programs, it's a wildlife program, basically said they would like the 35 corridor, the I-35 corridor that's up from is it Minnesota all the way down to through Texas, to be basically a butterfly corridor, and plant and on the sides of the road where there really isn't much except grass, plant plants that will attract butterflies, and especially the monarch, because they basically come down that way. And so he was excited about that, and that's when, we already had a butterfly garden in our front yard, and so that's when he sort of approached people. And I don't know to whom he first spoke. I know he talked to the chancellor pretty early on, and he was working with Camellia Myers, who is Mayers, who's in the botany, who's a botanist. And I don't know how closely they were working at that time, but that's when I know he first suggested that we have one.
Okay. Because that kind of answers what the ultimate goal for the butterfly garden is, but is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I think he had different ideas. The main thing is just the butterflies, to bring in the butterflies and moths and the pollinators in general, the bees and those kinds of things. But also I think he saw it as a teaching tool. That there could be some kind of something that little kids could come through and develop an interest in preserving that population. And that is part of the sort of the way it's written up, is it would be a sort of teaching place as well as a place just for TW students to enjoy and butterflies.
Well, when you spoke to us before, you had mentioned that butterflies don't really like the flowers that we tend to consider beautiful. And so I can see that changing that idea of what we think is beauty to something that will actually help.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know that they had some pictures made of it and this kind of stuff, and they're lovely. They're artist rendering, but I just would, every time I look at them, I just think, this is not what my garden looks like. And most of these flowers are pretty, but they're not the roses, they're not the hibiscus, they're not these beautiful things that we tend to think are beautiful. They're weed plants in lots of cases. I mean, milkweed is a weed, and it's pretty, but one of the things that all these plants do is, now Camellia could tell you a lot more about this than I, but what they tend to do is bloom at different times. Like I have some right now that are blooming now that didn't bloom in the summer, and then there's some that really bloomed for a while and then they're dead now. So I think that's part of what the advantage is, that you can have lots of different kinds of weed plants. Other plants, frost comes and they're all gone. So and these are probably going to be gone too, but they're
And a lot of them belong here, and so
they're all natural.
They do a lot better with this weather.
All the ones that he and Camellia are using are ones that are Texas native or have been conditioned to Texas and therefore fit into the Texas climate. I think almost everything is actually a native plant, though, because we have a lot of stuff in Texas.
Just give another teaching moment of, these are the plants that belong here. These are the plants that thrive here, and this is why.
Right.
What, as far as you know, what has caused the butterflies to become endangered?
Oh, I'm sure I know what it is. It's the destruction of the habitat. I mean, nobody's doing this on purpose. It's just that farmers have just, for obvious reasons, are plowing up their fields and planting food crops. One of the things that I do think is interesting is how many of our food crops rely on pollinators. And I don't think we think of that. It's the food crop production, I think it's a couple of billion a year. I mean, it's a huge thing. And yet we don't really think that if we don't have bees and butterflies, then they're not going to be pollinated. Now, I know the Chinese are trying something where they do it themselves, but I don't think it works.
So you can, but it's a huge waste of time and resources when all you have to do is do things to help support the native life that does it for you.
Right. One of my friends who's a professor up at Minnesota has been working independently. We didn't even realize we were both interested in this, on monarchs at the top end of their movement south. And she said that you can see around the areas that there used to be lots and lots of milkweed plants, and they're all gone now. And she can physically see that up in Minnesota.
I hadn't even thought of this until this came up, and I thought, I haven't seen milkweed in forever. It was everywhere when I grew up.
Right.
And it's weird to think.
Yeah. Well, it's just, it's a weedy plant, and if you're trying to grow crops, it's not terribly helpful, I guess.
How would you describe your husband's passion for butterflies?
Well, it was a passion, all right. You saw some of the stuff that's in my house. I cannot tell you how many of the ones that he had not even relaxed, that were just in little glass cases, because he's been doing this since he was a child. He told me that the first butterflies he ever took, he was 9 years old. And I think personally that it made him, part of the reason that he became so academically smart, I think obviously he was smart, but is he was learning Latin words when he was like 9 years old.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. And so by the time we got married, in fact, these butterflies that you can see up here are the first ones he ever gave me. And they're starting to fade, because there really is no color in those. Those are morphos, and it's really just the wings, the scales on the wings that are the color. But I mean, he was very young when he gave me those, and so it's just been. We had been married 6 weeks when he took his first 6 weeks trip to the jungle. That wasn't his first trip; it was just the first trip since we were married. So it's a passion, and he's liked them. He thought they were beautiful.
The word is Lepidopterus?
Yeah, Lepidoptera.
Which I think is a fun word, and we need to find more reasons to say it. He'd have been a true Lepidopterus. Yeah. Not just like a hobbyist who loves butterflies, but someone who studies them and knows everything about them.
Well, he studied them and knows everything about it, and I've got the books in my house to prove it. But
okay, how has his passion been passed to you?
Oh, I think it's just because of him. I mean, after all, we have 2 rooms in the house that were built just to hold the butterfly collection. So I never thought much about butterflies one way or the other. I mean, I knew they were symbols. They were Christian symbols. I knew they were, they flew around my house sometime. I knew they looked pretty on clothes and stuff, but I never thought about butterflies. And so it's really been through Jeff. I will tell you one thing, is that I probably am the only woman in Denton whose children used to walk around with caterpillars on their body. I mean, seriously, they would come in, and these little girls, and they'd walk in and say, "Oh, look, Mommy," and it'd be some very interesting looking, but nonetheless, a caterpillar on their arms, and they were never afraid.
Ordinary, normal people need to do to be able to
Well, I think that as far as a general help, milkweed is easy to grow, and there's lots of pretty different kinds of milkweed, and there are other plants that would do the same thing for other butterflies. And really, some potted plants help. I mean, anything helps. You have to have full sun. We were not able to put in the butterfly garden until that winter that's before y'all were here pretty much killed our magnolias, and so we just wiped it out, and it was this huge area of sunshine all of a sudden, and that's when we put in the butterfly garden. So you do need to have some sunshine, because most of these plants, the butterflies come with the sun, at least the ones I know. Moths will come other times, but they're different. So
that is kind of the beauty of things that are labeled as weeds. They do grow.
They do grow. They do.
They do. And as far as this project specifically, is there anything you can think of that we could do to help?
Oh, well, I would say that for students especially, we're going to need people who will volunteer. What we've asked for, and Jeff had started asking for this a year and a half ago, is groups who would commit to, not much, maybe 2 or 3 times a semester, go out and do things like weed or, plant or things like that. The facilities people, the plant people, have been wonderful about saying, that they'll try to help, but they obviously can't do it. When you think about what they're doing at the university as a whole, they can't be responsible for this. And I don't think it will take a whole lot of cultivation, because it's the kind of plants they are. But certainly it would be thrilling for us to get more groups because some have, different departments, the honor scholars, some, I don't know, I think one of the fraternities, Kappa Sig, has been helping. And so I know that kind of stuff is really helpful. And if we could, and again, I don't want groups to think that they have to commit to every week going out and doing something, because that's not the case. What we hope is that we have enough groups and just people who like butterflies who will go out just every once in a while and be people you could count on. That was the biggest thing Jeff was worried about, that people would get excited about it, but it would just sort of die out as those people graduated or something, and that can't happen, or we've done all this for nothing.
And I know when we think of garden, we think big, massive areas dedicated to growing. How little does it, what size would you say it takes to start making a difference, to start helping?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it has to be very much, especially since we literally are in the corridor where the biggest problem is, at least for the monarchs. And so I don't think you have to have a large space. But I know that the big garden, the big one that Jeff wanted is a big space.
Yeah, and it's cool that here at Texas Women's we have the ability to do that.
Yes.
It just kind of seems to me that if everybody had like that potted plant out there, if all of us did it, it wouldn't take much, because it would be a giant area because all of us did a little.
Right.
And so.
No, you're correct. I mean, I don't think it takes a whole lot, because they'll come. The little garden that's over by the biology department, I had students in my university class last year who helped plant some of the stuff. Though, it's got butterflies all the time. So.
And just to close out, is there anything else you think that students or viewers should know?
I just think it's a really important thing, and I think we can't underestimate both the financial benefit they are to us, as well as just the kind of an emotional benefit. Wouldn't it be sad if you didn't have butterflies that look like that again? Now, those are not near us, but we have some really beautiful ones in Texas, and it would be a shame if that became so unimportant that we didn't care. So,
yeah.
I guess that's my speech.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Want to help get the project going? You can earn your wings by donating a gift to the Texas Women's University Butterfly Garden Project. Those who donate will receive their name on the Butterfly Garden webpage. Different donation amounts give different wings. Without pollinators, plants can't reproduce. They're not only important to our ecology, but they're also important to our hearts. Let's do something about it. Visit TW's Butterfly Garden webpage for more info on how you can help either through donations or volunteering. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and receive updates, news, and tips on how you can be a part of this great adventure.